We'll kind of just go into a little bit introduction about yourself. We wanted to go into because my cousin actually read your book or listened to the audio
Yeah.
and he really enjoyed it and we wanted to go into kind of like we know about your bet and how you got started with ultra running, and I think that's one of the like really interesting and unique stories to get into such a crazy sport like that. So if you want to go ahead and go and kind of introduce how you got into this sport a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there, really being overweight
Mm-hmm.
and being someone that never had run before
Mm-hmm.
to then get up and to start running and to have to get out the front door and realize that I was overweight, unhealthy, couldn't run around the block. It was really a huge challenge and, something that I just had to take really small steps to begin with. And that's what I did. I started off doing a block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks, trying to lose weight, trying to get fit. And I had a bet with a friend of mine that he could run the half marathon distance faster than I could. We'd made the bet drunk one evening, and I was so drunk I gave him 5 minutes head start as well.
Oh,
And he'd actually run the race before previously, so he'd been used to running a half marathon.
Yeah.
So, it was a pretty bold sort of statement. When I woke up the next morning and I was hungover, my wife reminded me of the bet that I'd made. And I realized that I had to get up and get out of bed and get into shape as quickly as possible because I think we had about 10 weeks until the race was on.
Wow.
And yeah, I had to lose, I was about 250 pounds as well at the time. So I was hugely overweight.
Uh-huh.
And in 10 weeks, I lost a load of weight. I improved from running around block to being running miles and miles and miles. And he would actually put on Twitter at the time, like what he was doing each day. He'd be out saying he did 5 miles or 8 miles or 10 miles. And I was doing all of this training, but I just wasn't telling anyone about it. And even so, he asked me a couple of times, have you been out training? Have you actually got out the front door yet? And I'd just be like, no, I'm just going to wing it on the day and try my best.
Okay.
And of course, 10 weeks later, when I turn up on the day and I'm looking, reasonably fit and the gun goes off and I start racing off on him, knowing that I still had to make 5 minutes on the time to win the bet. He was sort of shocked and he was left sort of in my dust, if you like. So that was really how it all started. It was really a bet that fired up the inner sort of competitive side of me that I had from being a child. Very, very good sort of child sportsman, playing golf, cricket, our sport in Australia, and field hockey as well. To then just becoming someone who in their 20s and 30s got into alcohol, drinking too much, not doing any exercise, and too much partying and too much of the bad stuff. And the bet really made me realize when everyone was around me making the bet with my friend about the half marathon race, people were laughing at me. People saying, there's no way you can go and beat him and run this race. And that was the challenge that I needed to go out there and make a change in myself.
Was it more of a, and also I want to get into like how much weight did you lose in 10 weeks? I mean, what was the, I mean, was it just out of spite that you just, or was it like, was it the competitive aspect? What was it that kind of just made you go for this crazy, insane challenge?
Well, growing up, I had a really difficult childhood, very violent, abusive, depressive upbringing, which meant I left home at a very early age. So around the age of 13, I left home and I put myself through school. I've lived everywhere from under bridges to caravans to pubs, hotels, you name it. Like I've kind of lived it. I lived in someone's shed for a while. So I've had this ability to really drive myself, but I've also been really burnt by people as well, and people laughing at me or people saying that you're never going to make anything of yourself. All of those things that we've all probably faced to some degree at some point. The level, I guess, of mine was maybe just a little bit sort of stronger than some others, and it really just drove me to want to prove people wrong. So having that same situation, even though I was around a group of friends, but those friends were laughing at me, doubting my ability to do something, was the sort of notion that I needed to get up and to prove people wrong. And that's always been something that I've really wanted to do my whole life. And little did I know running would be the outlet that would be really good for me to be able to use for that.
and I think we can relate probably on that level. But I mean, even when we did our first ultra 50 miler January, and people were telling
Awesome.
us that's like come on, man, you're not going to be able to run 50 miles. We were in relatively good shape, but
Yeah.
like not 50 miles worthy. And we every time somebody said that to us, that kind of drove us a little further. So I mean, what is it about that people want to kind of like do that to you just because they can't do it? They want to kind of put that mindset in you, or they want to put their insecurities onto you a little bit.
I think you're right. I think that's what it is. I think people are very scared to be able to go out there and challenge themselves. It doesn't have to be running, but day to day life, I think people are frightened to take the risk, or and maybe it's a risk of failure. But it doesn't matter if you guys had gone to that race in January and even not finished the race. Like, it's taking the learnings away from what you've gone in the preparation, the training, getting to the race day, and what you learn about yourself throughout those stages that makes you a better person as well. And I think, failure is not always a bad thing. It's just how you reflect on it. Of course, you guys no doubt went and smashed the race, and now you're probably looking at doing your first 100 miles. And that's the other way that goes as well, is it takes you off in a different direction where you just grow and grow and grow as a person, and within yourself, and being a better human every day as well.
Yes, sir.
So do you still keep in contact with that friend today? Is he looking at you now like, wow, what did I start?
We're really good friends, and he thinks he's created this sort of running lunatic, I guess, which is me. So he sort of feels responsible for what's actually happened. And if it hadn't have been for Dan and I and having that bet, I would never have gone to the Gobi Desert and do the race out there, which changed my life as well. So I guess, yeah, I have to give him a little bit of thanks for that.
So how long after how long had you been doing ultra running before you did that race in the Gobi Desert?
That was about 2 years after I first took up running, 2 or 3 years actually, that I
Wow.
first took up running. Yeah.
Was that your
Um,
was that your first race internationally, or did you? Oh no, you did the Kalahari, right, with your wife?
yes.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Kalahari was the first real race of any ultra that I did. It just happened to be a crazy desert race in the Kalahari Desert in South Africa as well. 250 kilometers, 155 miles, 6 stage, 7 day race. What makes those races even more ridiculous is you have to carry your food and kit and everything you need to survive the week as well. You're only given water at certain checkpoints throughout the day, normally limited amount of water as well. So if you drink all your water or you run out of water, you've really just got to wait till the next checkpoint or wait till the next day until you get a refill of water. So it can be really difficult as well. But having grown up in a really hot environment in Australia, a really dry sort of country town where I'd be outside most of the day anyway. I've always been used to the heat, used to playing competitive sport, as I mentioned earlier, when I was younger. So the heat is one of the aspects that I'm really good at, and being able to be outside with a lack of water is a bit of a strength. So it just so happened after I ran the race with Dan, the half marathon, I ended up beating him, by the way, in that race. Uh, I came in at like 1 hour 28, and I sat there like at the finish line because I knowing that I'd given him that 5 minutes. I had to just wait and wait and wait. The time comes past. I think he did like a 1 hour 40, and he was just blown away that I'd beaten him. So he had to take me and my wife Lucia out for dinner that evening, which cost him a lot of money because even though I'd slimmed down, I could still eat quite a lot. So that
Especially
was what
for a race like that, you probably wanted.
exactly. So I made sure that I got my money's worth out of that bet. And that was like in the April, I think, of that year. In the December, it's my wife's birthday. So I bought her a book for her birthday, and it was a book about the world's toughest endurance challenges
Mhm.
and toughest Ironmans, toughest bike races, toughest running races that you can think of, all the tough things that you could go and do around the world. And I jokingly said to her, no doubt after a few drinks, like whatever page you land on, whatever you open it up to, is the race that we'll go and do together. And she opened up to the Kalahari Extreme Marathon, and that was in December, and the race was in the October of the next year. So in 2014, we'd go out there to do that race together. And yeah, it was one of those things that I then had to prepare and get training for. But I don't find running enjoyable. I don't find running fun. I don't go out and run 20 miles and think that was the best day of my life. Yet she does. So my training was really quite lazy and a little bit, a bit on and off leading up to the race. I'd only done one marathon, which was the marathon in the August of that year in France called the Marathon de Medoc. And if you've never heard of it, it's a marathon run through the Bordeaux vineyards. And you get to eat wine, drink cheese, drink wine, eat cheese, eat meat every mile of the race. There's a checkpoint. So
that's like a fun race. That's
it's really, really cool. But by the time you get to like the 20-mile mark, your stomach's just like a washing machine churning of red wine and food and ice cream. And it's about maybe 80, 90 degrees. So it's pretty hot as well.
Yeah.
And by the time I finished that marathon, I was nearly in tears. I didn't want to run ever again. I got into that shower that evening and I was like so hot and had, what's the word I'm looking for? Chafing, where the sun don't shine. So I got in the shower and I was like screaming because of the water hitting all of these areas. And it kind of dawned on me, like, only in a couple of months' time, I was out to do this race in South Africa, and I just was so ill prepared for it. And I trained a little bit harder after that in the August to get ready for the race in the October. But I never did an ultra. I went to do one, and I did 26 miles of it. And actually, on the loop of the 26 miles, you had to go out past the finish line and do another 4 miles to make it an ultra marathon. And I couldn't be bothered. So it wasn't the greatest preparation. Yeah. So I did a marathon. I ended up going to that race and I was really out of my league there, but I just went there with this same sort of mindset. Like, people had said that there's no way you're going to be able to finish this race. People were watching and people were sort of waiting for me to say I pulled out on one of the days. So I just drove myself each day to run as hard as I could, as fast as I could, get through it. I realized at the race, like, I wasn't as fit as the top runners, but I had a strength being able to run through the heat and to keep going in the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. So I used that to my sort of ability. And I ended up finishing the race at the end of the week in 6th place overall amongst a field of, professional and semi-professional runners. And that was really the first moment that I got told by some of the other people there, look, you should really maybe take things a little bit more seriously. Perhaps you'd be quite good at this.
Yeah, you could get somewhere in this sport, I think.
Yeah. So that was sort of, humble beginnings, and really for all the wrong reasons that I took up running, really.
Now, how big of a difference is your training regimen now compared to when you were just I guess, hunkering it down and just trying to make it through each run and each race? Is there a big drastic change?
Yeah, of course, massive change with lifestyle, diet, alcohol. Still love all of those things, but then I put the work in on the other side, which is what I wasn't doing before. So, an average week will be 60 miles to 100 miles a week, around 15,000 feet of vert. So really trying to make sure that it's quality over quantity, but also getting out there and spending the time on the trails as well and working on specific sessions.
Is there anything in like your diet that you restrict, that you just try to stay away from completely? Or is it kind of like, if I want this, I'll put in the big run and then I'll go have a slice of cake, or I'll go have the mouth pleasure, or is it kind of, yeah.
No, I think everything in moderation is the best way to live life. And, at certain times throughout the year, I'll cut out alcohol, I'll cut out coffee, or I'll cut out meat, and I'll just try and play with what works best. But after a race, like I'm straight in there, back on the beer, having some fun and making sure that, life's worth living as well. And whilst I was doing all of those races from 2013 up to and past the Gobi race, I was working for an alcohol company in Scotland, making some of the best whiskey in the world, gin, rum. And so I worked for a business leading a sales team that drinking and having fun and being part of hospitality was part of the business. So, I had to sort of step outside being a runner as well and do my job and be part of that as well. So it made for quite a unique balance.
Yeah, that is a unique balance for sure. How do you balance? I mean, we're in school right now, and we're in university right now, and we're just it's kind of easier, I guess, when you don't have to worry about having a wife or maybe a family or a mortgage to take care of. But how do you, as a real adult, how do you balance like your training and everything else in your life, or traveling to these crazy locations and getting those races done, and then coming back and being an adult? You know?
Well, I mean, you guys still have commitments and still got to go and study hard. And I guess it's not all partying, but, it's just like anything. If something's important to you, it's really just making sure that you set the time aside and that you put the effort in and you know where you want to go with things. Then I think you find the time as well. And that's been always really important to me, is cutting out at certain times of the year, having that social life, because I've wanted to go out and to train hard. And I would train in the middle of the night or early in the morning when other people are sleeping. I'd train. I'd set up actually to get ready for the desert. I was living in Edinburgh in Scotland at the time. Pretty cold, wet, windy place. Doesn't get overly hot even in summer. I would actually set up a treadmill in my spare room. I'd have 2 radiators there already that could generate some decent heat, but I got 2 industrial size heaters. I'd put this covering on the windows to make sure that the heat couldn't get out and evaporate. And inside, I would set up a treadmill and I would watch everything on YouTube and Netflix that you could think of to motivate me to do my training each day with the bag on my back, temperatures around that sort of 80, 90 degrees.
Wow.
And I'd slog it away, and it would really suck at times. But the end goal and the motivation and the drive was there to me to want to do well at something, that I just came up with the right answers to do it.
Is that something that motivation, is that something that comes from you just looking at that or focusing on that end goal, or is it like a self-talk kind of thing too, where you're kind of like, oh, well, I've done enough, but or do you just say to yourself, okay, I need to keep going here because I know it's worth it in the end?
I think there's always that little bit inside of you, if you want to be competitive at something or if you want to achieve something. It doesn't even need to be sport, or whether it's business or personal life. Like, you always know, if you go that little bit further than everyone else doing the same thing, you're going to be a little bit further up the ladder than they are. And it's putting in all of the effort from start of the day to the finish of the day and making sure that it all adds up. And getting the preparation, it's all about the preparation before the race. I mean, the race is really the easy part, and the race is all about the fun. The training is the hard yards, and if you can do that, the race then becomes the fun part of it.
Yeah, totally agree with you. From our experience, from our short experience, that's what we've gotten out of it so far. You got to do what's necessary.
Exactly. And once it's flipped the other way, and you're not doing the training, you're having the fun beforehand, and the race really sucks and it takes forever, or you miss cutoffs and you don't finish. I think, there can be good reasons for that. And sometimes you need to evaluate what went wrong, and maybe you weren't ready for the race. And there's times even when I'll now not go to a race because I'll find that work and life in general has taken over so much that I don't want to go to a race and put myself through that sort of negative cycle, that I'll just take myself out and look at how to do things better instead of, going out there and assessing a failure.
Yes, yeah. It seems like you really figured out the balance pretty well, or you've got it down to a certain T.
Yeah, it's come, I guess, through learnings, and it depends what you want to get out of the sport as well. And there's nothing wrong with just going and completing races and enjoying them. And I guess if you want to be at the front of anything in life, then you just need to put in a little bit more effort.
Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense. Now we want to get into a little bit of because I'm a biology major, and I've been trying to go into the veterinary field, and that's where I really I really kind of related with you on that story, because we're both animal lovers, and we've had dogs and stuff like that, and we would love to run a race with our dog, but I don't think he could make. I know for a fact my dog couldn't make it. So, how, if you want to talk, and you have a book that just came out, which is Finding Gobi, and if you want to explain your story with that and how you found your new pal.
Yeah, a life-changing journey that happened in 2016 when I flew out to China to run another one of those 155-mile, 6-stage, 7-day multi-stage races in the Gobi Desert. And on day 2 of the race, a little stray dog was at the start line, and she was chewing on my shoes, and she was giving me a bit of hassle. I'd finished day one in third place, and I was thinking about the next day's stage, day two, of us running 25 miles. We would cross a mountain range called the Tian Shan Mountain Range, which is a stunning range in the middle of the Gobi Desert, which is really unique because it's got snow-capped mountains on it most of the year. Yet you're in the heat of the Gobi Desert. So snow leopards, wolves live up there, bears, and then in the desert you've got like Bactrian camels. The Gobi Desert's really unique because it's the first sort of location of dinosaur eggs as well. So it's amazing. And on day two of the race, thinking about how I finished third the day before, I wanted to go out, take the lead early on and try and push on and win the race, like the stage overall, but also take the overall lead. And I looked down at my shoes and this little dog's chewing on them, and I tell her to shoo, to go away. And she jumps back onto my shoes, and she's specifically chewing on gator. And a gator is sand gator that goes over your feet, goes over your shoes, keeps the sand out. And the importance of that is, of course, to stop getting blisters and getting any issues with your feet. So when I see her chewing on probably one of the most important pieces of kit, I like flick her off. Yeah. I didn't swear, but I was like, go away. And she jumped back on like a little puppy, and she started chewing on them again. And she's really like happy and excitable, and I flicked her off. And there's 100 other runners at the race, and I said to them, who else, whose dog is this? And thinking it was a volunteer or someone else's dog, I wasn't sure where this dog had come from. And the gun went off, and we're running all down the trail, and this damn dog's still attached to my leg, and I flick her off, and we run down the trail, and she then sort of drops by my side and starts running next to me. And we cross this huge mountain range up in the snow and go back down the other side. And I didn't have a really good day. I struggled a little bit in the temperatures. It was a bit cold. And I was running in towards the finish line, and there was all this clapping and cheering, and the locals were playing these drums. And they normally only do that for the first place male, first place female finishers. Yet I'd come in fourth, and I was like, what the hell's going on? Why is there all this excitement for me finishing? I cross, and there's still all this excitement. So I turn around to see what's going on behind me. And here's this little dog running in behind me, and she'd been with me the whole day, 25 miles. Wow. And it was just like incredible to think, she's a tiny little Chihuahua Shih Tzu mix, and she kept up with me all day. Sometimes she'd run ahead of me, and she'd sit ahead of me and wait, and as if to say, hurry up, we're going too slow here.
She's waiting on you now.
Exactly. So we became sort of buddies during the day, and I didn't give her any food. I didn't give her any water. The snow sort of would melt during the day, so she could drink as much water as she wanted. Okay. And when she crossed the finish line, she sort of collapsed down next to me, and she looked up at me. And it was the first time that I thought, oh my goodness, this dog hasn't had any food. And I started to sort of care for it because, as you guys, like, I'm an animal lover and had dogs before, and really wanted to make sure this dog was fed and watered and looked after. And that's what I sort of did. I took over a little bit, and she came and she laid next to me in the tent, and I gave her some of the food that I'm carrying. And that's a big deal. Like, if you guys are at the race and you say, hey, Dion, can I have some of your food? I haven't brought enough.
Yeah.
Especially if we were competing, it'd probably be like, oh, I don't think so, Sorry, fellas. You're going to have to just drop out of the race, But of course, Gobi didn't have any food, so it was a pretty big deal for me to give her a lot of my food, because before the race, like, everything's planned each day: calories, fat, protein, carbohydrates. Everything's scientifically done to be able to make me last the race. And to be handing out to this little stray puppy was a big deal, but it was the start of what would be a wonderful week together.
That is awesome. I can't imagine that. It just seems a little crazy that she was so attached to you immediately. There was a connection that built in right there, and she just, I don't know, like she was drawn to you or something. It seems like it was fate,
Absolutely, and if only she could tell us why, why she chose me out of all the other runners there, 100 other runners, 50 odd volunteers. She could have gone with anyone at any time, and that was only day two. We're still running for a whole week. We've still got to sleep overnight in camps, and she could go off at any stage. she could run with me at other stages throughout the week and take off. Yet she stuck with me. And on day 3 of the race, I'm still in 3rd place overall. I see 1st and 2nd place leaving this large river crossing that I'm about to enter. And I know I'm catching these 2 guys for the stage. And I think to myself, this is my moment. This is the chance I can catch up, overtake them, and push on and pick up the place, but also push on for the overall win.
Uh-huh.
And I just rush into the water, and I'm like, the water's, so it's about 300 feet of crossing. It's, I'm about 6 foot, and the water's about up to my waist in height. And it's really strong current.
Oh, wow.
And I'm making sure, like going through the water, that I don't fall over, because if the bag gets wet, my food gets wet, or the kit gets wet, I'm probably pretty screwed for the week. And I get across about halfway, and I hear this yelping and barking and whining behind me, and I'm seeing 1st and 2nd leave the water. And it stops me in my tracks, because I realize it's the dog, and the dog didn't have a name still at this stage. And I thought to myself, maybe something's happened to it. So I turned around and see what was going on, and this little dog's running up and down the riverside and the riverbank, because she's panicking. She can't cross the water on her own. She knows she'll get washed away if she does.
Yeah.
And just in that split second, like, I didn't even overly think about it. I just went back over there, went all the way back, and decided that I was going to pick her up. And, I'd given the dog some food. She'd got her water. The other racers were much more interested in this little dog than I was. Yet here I was finding myself needing to pick her up to go over the water. And at that moment, I started to think, has this dog got rabies or any germs or diseases, or is it going to bite me? And I hadn't touched it. And I was like, okay. So I picked it up knowing it's a stray dog. Maybe it doesn't want to be picked up. And I sort of went to, like, keep your mouth away from me. Yet she nestled into my arm, and she just looked at me with, like, love in her eyes. And I just connected with her. There was some moment, and I took her across the river crossing, and I just thought, wow, there's more to this. This dog's really has chosen me. Perhaps it is for a reason. And, I mentioned my upbringing and the sort of leaving home at an early age, and having a very difficult childhood. And I could see a little bit of myself in Gobi, this dog that had nothing and nobody and wasn't being overly loved. And I thought to myself, right, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to bring this dog home. And Gobi would run 6 stages of the week, and she'd run exactly half of the race, so 80 miles. And we'd name her Gobi out in the desert. And after the race, I'd planned to bring her home to Edinburgh in Scotland, where I was living, and give her a better life.
Wow. Oh my! I think she could almost feel your intent a little bit. I think animals probably could pick up on that, like a sixth sense almost. They can kind of feel your intent, especially when especially when she was with you for the majority of the race, and you go to pull her across that river. She knew you weren't trying to hurt her or do anything, so that she felt, I guess, naturally comfortable in your arms.
And still at that time, like, I'm still running a lot of the races that I was going to. I was still running with that anger and that thought process inside of me, like, to drive me.
Mm-hmm.
My running's really changed a lot now, where I'm running a lot happier, a lot more positively, whereas then I was sort of using it as that medicine, if you like, to clear my mind out. And so maybe she could pick up on that. Maybe she could pick up this person needed help, or this person needed something else. And yeah, little did I know that when I finished the race, I made Gobi this promise to bring her home. Our story would go all around the world. It'd be picked up on CNN. It'd be on Fox, ABC. We were actually ESPN, one of the play of the days.
Well, you're telling me that, I think. Yeah.
It was just incredible, It was just huge. And I couldn't believe it, I thought, how cool is this that our story's sort of taken off around the world. And it was like, at the moment, I thought that was pretty good fun. But, things would take a different twist over the next couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, when you went to go back home and go, well, you had to leave Gobi with who? The race director, I think it was?
Well, after the race, I left with race organisers and some volunteers who said that they'd look after Gobi. And I flew back to Scotland, tried to work out how we would bring this little dog from northwest China down to Beijing, and then get her all the way back over to the UK.
Mhm.
But before I could do that, she went missing, and she was missing in a city called Urumqi, a city of 3 million people.
Wow.
And I was devastated. I was heartbroken, and I'd made Gobi that promise, and I thought to myself, my promise to her has been broken, just like many, many sort of promises to me had been broken when I was a child, that I thought, I'm going to do something about. I'm going to buck the trend and make sure I'm not the same sort of person. And I flew all the way back out there and set up a search and volunteer team to find her, and didn't know anyone in China, didn't speak Chinese, obviously.
Oh my goodness.
Didn't particularly even like the place at the time, because I went to do the race. I got out there as quickly as I could afterward, go back to work, and it was just a race to me. It was nothing more than that. And here I am in this big city now on my own, trying to find this little dog, and the story takes a completely different twist.
How much hope did you have going back? Because with the big, not big city, but still, that's a lot of people in that area, and how much hope did you have of finding this dog? It's
China's a unique place, so it's not a big city in the terms of Chinese, but still 3 million people. And what makes it really unique is there's 2 different languages within one city, 2 different cultures, 2 different religions, and they just clash.
oh wow.
So it's a really difficult city to sort of get on and get, especially as a Westerner. China can be difficult at the best of times, but then to be in this melting hot pot of all of this politics, religion, race, they're like, what the hell are you doing here? And I can't communicate with either language set. So it really just became me putting up these reward posters that we got printed up, and I started putting them out, and I had a donation of some money that was put towards a reward amount, which was around $1,500 US, and that's around 3 months' salary for someone that lives in that part of northwest China. So it's a fair bit of money.
Yeah.
People started to see me put these signs up and the figure of the money, and then of course more people became more interested, and then there was lots and lots of genuine people that came searching day and night and helping me. And of course the money brought the negative and the bad people as well, and it brought the people saying, we've got your dog. And I'd go out there and I'd go into their house, and it'd be a Labrador, and I'd be like, this is in Gobi, and they'd be like, well, we know you've got some money, we know the media's following your story, give us some of the money. And I'd get into arguments with them, and
That's just
I'd have other phone calls saying, we've got your dog, we want more than what you're offering, otherwise we're going to kill her. People would say they were going to come after me as well.
goodness.
Yeah, it went absolutely like, I guess, like a movie script. It just went crazy, and the story was huge in China. The world's press that had covered the story in the first place was now awaiting news as where Gobi was.
Yeah.
The Chinese government became involved. They were aware of all of the world's press, and everyone talking about it on social media around the world, but also in China. So we were told if I said anything negatively about what was going on there, that the search would be shut down and I'd be shipped out of the country pretty quickly as well.
So you even had to be, censored a little bit, and they watched over you the whole time. So that's wow.
Yeah. So it's a difficult situation to find yourself in, and a situation that was nothing that I'd ever even thought of that would happen just trying to bring this dog home. So that was incredibly difficult, and it was incredibly nervous for me going around the streets as well, and incredibly worrying as well, thinking, how was I being watched and what was happening, and were people looking at my phone or text messages or computers, etc. And all of this stuff was allegedly going on as well.
Oh, I could imagine. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
So how relieved were you and when you found Gobi? How did you just expect another person just, feeding you lies when you showed up, or what was the situation?
Basically, yeah. This had gone on for weeks and weeks and weeks that Gobi was missing, and I wasn't out there for that long when we received a phone call to say, we think we found your dog. And I went to this family home fully expecting that it was going to be another letdown, another shakedown for some money. And I walked into this family's home, and this little dog had followed a man and his son home as they were walking through a park. And they thought, that dog looks a little bit like the dog in the photos. And the photos that we had were from the race, and the sunlight out in the Gobi Desert makes a dog look completely different to having the dog inside of your house and taking a photo of her. So when I saw the picture that they'd sent me, I was like, it looks a little bit like her, but a lot of dogs look like her out there. I don't think it's her. Yet my friend and I, my friend Richard flew over from Hong Kong, he was at the race. He said, I'll come and help you as well. He sort of really pushed me to go out there and to see if this was Gobi. And I walked into this family's room, their house and their lounge room.
Mhm.
And I walked behind a few people, a translator, a driver, Richard, some other people that were already there to see if it was the dog.
Mhm.
And the dog starts running across the lounge room, and she's barking and yelping and whining, just like she was on the river crossing that day. And she jumps up into my arms, and I knew straight away it was Gobi.
That's your Gobi.
It was incredible. I was in tears. Everyone else around me was in tears.
Oh my
Just
God.
couldn't believe it. The press, like we put it on social media that we'd found Gobi, and the press went crazy again all around the world.
I could imagine. It's a very, very unique story. I mean, unique alone to be running an ultra marathon or a stage race, but to have a dog follow you the whole time, and then you go back to find the dog, and how. I mean, I'm working in a veterinary hospital for a little bit just to get my experience, and I know how complicated it is just to get to move a dog from one country to another. Just the process, the quarantine, the shots. I mean, what was that?
Yeah.
That must have been another headache all on its own.
Yeah, and sometimes unless you've gone through the procedure or like yourself, you're aware of how long that sort of takes. It's really underestimated just how long it takes, how expensive it is. And it took me another 4 months after Gobi was found before I actually got back to the UK with Gobi. So I made the decision that finally we'd found Gobi. We'd found each other the first time in the desert. We've now found each other the second time in this big city. I thought, I'm not going to leave her again. So I stayed out in China. My workplace gave me a sabbatical at the time, so I could stay out there. And I just went through the whole procedures with her, getting the quarantine done, getting the blood tests done. Gobi needed an operation on her leg because she'd been hit by a car.
Oh,
So she needed an FHO operation. And it was, so that was one thing we had to do really quickly. Otherwise, the leg was probably going to have to be removed. We didn't know if she had rabies or not. I mean, it's very likely she didn't, but of course you never know until you get the blood work back. So that took 3 months to have all of those answers and have everything in place to go home.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That's another. I mean, besides the fact that you spending so much time in China already, and you're waiting on this whole process with I mean, that's just insane. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It was 6 months from the moment I went to go out to do the race to getting home, and walking through my own front door in Edinburgh was 6 months. And I never ever have guessed, that going out to that race where life would take me afterwards.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give credit to a little bit of those ultra runs giving you that much of a persistent resilience, I think.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been part of it that's helped. Knowing the tough times will come and go, and it's waiting to get through those low moments to get back to the highs. And that was really what kept me going. And the ability to be able to go out and search for 20 hours a day, or to keep going for 20 hours a day and day after day as an ultra runner, someone that can do those week-long races, I was sort of able to do that.
Now, we've done the one ultra run, and we're progressing to look at some other ones now. We've looked at the Keys 100, something still local in Florida.
Yeah.
But he's
a really cool guy.
Oh, you've done it?
I don't know. I've not done the race, but I met Bob in a race in China called the Mount Galagong 100. And back in 2016, it was the first 100-mile race in Tengchong in China. And Bob came over, and Bob's father actually was part of World War II that fought in that area. And so it was a really special moment for him to be able to go back there and to run where his father would have been flying all of those years above, in a completely different circumstance. So, yeah, I know Bob and I know the race. I haven't run it, but beautiful down there as well. So probably a really cool first 100 to go and do, I'd say.
That's what we were thinking. The terrain seems like it's not too complicated. It's mostly roads. You could stop off at a
Yeah.
gas station if you need some food, But yeah, we're progressing.
Look, that's really a good way to be able to do it, is to go to a race that's gives you the support, gives you the ability to get through to each of the aid stations, enjoy it. Some of that was my first 100 mile, that Mount Galagong Ultra, really difficult race. My second race that I did as a 100 miler was the Hurt 100 in Hawaii,
Oh,
one
wow,
of
yeah.
the world's most renowned, toughest ultras, and it's just a
That's
slog fest. Yeah. And, halfway through that race, I'm thinking, why didn't I just choose something else that would have been a lot more fun?
I'm sure you got a
Yeah.
lot out of it at the end.
In hindsight, you look back and you build from it, but building up the way you guys are doing it makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, we're doing. I mean, obviously, this is one of the reasons why we wanted to interview someone like you and starting this podcast is because I mean, the first ultra that we did was kind of like just guesswork. It was kind of like, all right, I guess we're gonna keep running until we can do that mileage or we feel comfortable enough to do that kind of mileage, I mean, he set up a plan where it was we were actually at two different universities at the time, and so we had to set up a training schedule where it kind of fit the both of us, and we did it, and I guess it worked out in the end, but we're just trying to.
And
What's that?
during the 50 miles, was there a point where you had differing levels of comfort? Was there a point where one of you was struggling and the other one had to sort of dig the other one out? And how did that sort of work?
It was definitely having someone there with you in that community. I mean, it was less of a competition at that point. Like, I mean, I know you're very, like, your whole aspect or the beginning of your introduction to ultra running was competitiveness, but we were out there just kind of just trying to push each other a little bit. And I mean,
Sure.
Obviously we were trying to get good time and trying to beat, some other players in there, but we were really just trying to, I mean, in new waters and new territories, just trying to figure it out. And obviously we had those peaks and valleys. And there was a moment where he, I think around mile 14, he did something to his knee, and his knee swelled up like a grapefruit. It was ridiculous. Oh my! But he muscled through.
That's early on.
Yeah, I know.
But one of the things I remember you mentioning in the book, you and your wife have a good connection. She's also a runner, and it almost seems like she almost held you accountable a bunch of times. And I could see the relation, like we hold each other accountable when we do these like races and things like that. I thought that was pretty cool.
I think having that accountability is huge, isn't it? And, if you ever listen to David Goggins talk about the accountability mirror that he has, whatever sort of technique that works for you, having someone else that you respond to is perfect. And when I went to the Kalahari race for the first time, my sort of accountability was my wife was running behind me at the race, and I wanted to make sure she didn't overtake me because I knew by the time we go back home, that's all I was going to hear. So we kept driving me each day to make sure that I finished at least ahead of her.
Yeah.
And, now we really set those goals and moments together. And if we're supporting each other a race, we know that we've got each other there to lean on, but also to put pressure on to say, come on, it's time to stop crying or stop moaning about something and just get on with it. And this is going to pass,
Was there a race in particular or a moment in particular where you just wanted to quit and like just give up and stop the race?
Yeah, and that happens, and not as regularly, but there's still times now when you come up with those moments and you think, what is going to get me through this? If I don't have the reason to be at the race now, I don't do them. So one of the things I did early on was I committed too much to what maybe a sponsor wanted, or I got invited to a race and I'd go and do that. And I'd find myself not really having anything inside of me that was driving me. And now if I'm fully committed to go to the race, then I'll go there and I'll finish it, and it's having the why. I did the Triple Crown of 200s in 2018. So
Wow.
The Bigfoot 200, Tahoe 200, Moab 240. I think it's in about a 10-week period. You do these three races. incredibly tough. You could be out there up to 100 hours. You could, have serious issues in trying to recover for the next race. And of course, if you fail one of them, you don't complete the series. And I was raising money for animals in need. I'd had use of sort of my profile with Gobi in that story to be able to engage with people all around the world to help donate and raise money and awareness. So I had commitment. I had commitment from other people instilled in me that they wanted me to get through that series of races. So when I got to the first 200, just like you going to your first 50, I didn't know I could do 200 miles or not. So, 50, 100 miles in, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, well, I've done 100 before. I've never done anything over 100. How am I going to get through this? All I had to do was think about all of the people that had donated, all the people that were sitting around the world watching this little tracker moving and people sending me support. And that was enough to really make me realize, like, you've just got to keep going.
Yeah. Wow.
So the why, having the why for something is important. Just going to a 100-mile race or 200-mile race or even a 10-mile race and not having a reason to get to the finish isn't enough, really.
Yeah, you got to have that little extra to push you forward when the hard times come. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. And, I had that earlier in my running career where I used that negativity and all the things in the basement to really drive me. Finding Gobi really helped me get over a lot of that stuff. I found more happiness, more joy, and more love within myself and within people. So then I'm moving forward. The first couple of races back, I found that there was nothing to really motivate me. Like, I struggled in my first races back after the Gobi because what was driving me? I was happy. My life seemed full of content. And now it's really using it for different reasons of motivation. And like I said, whether it's raising money or whether you want to go and prove something to yourself, then they're the things that will drive you to the finish line.
Wow, that why changed, so you had to adjust to that new why or find that new why.
And it happens during a race too. Things you need to be able to adapt, and adapting throughout a race at the difficult moments, the highs and the lows, and keeping that momentum going is really important as well.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. That's perfect. That's exactly what we need to hear at this time. Because I think there's a big difference. I think between going to a 50-mile race to 100, which is our next big endeavor, I would say, and because you're running close to 24 hours, and I mean that's when the sleep deprivation comes in, and that's when all those other factors come into play where you really need to find that why. So is there any way that you train specifically to be able to run for 24 plus hours that you want to kind of give us a little tip or something?
That's a good question. I guess it's just making sure that you're time on your feet and you're training and you're putting in all of the hard work. But then there's going to be those moments like the first time you do the 100, you're going to have to just dig deep and suck it up. And it is going to suck at times. And it's really just making sure that you don't give in at the weak moments, because once you get to that finish line, you'll have learned so much more about how to do your next 100, but how to live your life or to be a better person. And you'll learn things that you'll never have thought possible. And those things are so rewarding. And, when you go out, when you move on from the hundreds to the 200s and you're out for 3 or 4 days, there is a lot to learn about yourself. And those things you take into life that you can really crush everything else going forward as well then.
That's what I found most about this. Is a really big self-reflecting sport. Because I mean, you're really, that's all you got is you in your head. It's
and there's so many incredible people within the sport. So many other people out there, whether it's your fellow runners and competitors or the volunteers, the race organizers that'll get you to that finish line as well. It's only you that will either let yourself down with your training and preparation, or you that'll quit, and halfway through it because you're making excuses because you don't think you can do it when you can.
Yeah, no,
and we've all done it, but the feeling of having that DNF, and if you can't then look back and find a way to do things better, then you're really probably not really succeeding in a lot of things of your life. And that's probably a bigger picture then that needs looking at as well. And that's what you learn from some of these races.
It's I always try to find. I am always finding parallels to this sport and how it like goes into life. It's crazy how many, and you could use that for anything that's difficult, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I think running ultras is really, it's like,
Ooh, I think we cut out for a second. Oh, wait, we got you back.
oh, okay, cool. So I was saying, running ultras is like an added course to what you're already studying at university. And it's something that you can really take within life, and it's being able to dig deep, and it's giving yourself motivation. It's driving change. It's adapting under pressure. I mean, there's so many different points, preparation through to the finish, through to achieving something and looking back how you can achieve things bigger and better, how you can improve on things that you can take into life as well. So I think it's a really good school for everyone to go out and try.
Yeah, I try to get some of my other friends to kind of join me on runs sometimes, and they go, "You're crazy. I don't want to do that." I said, well, we'll go for a shorter run then. But I mean, I would like you to try it. Try something new that you haven't tried before. It would definitely benefit you. And I don't know if it's for everybody, and I don't know if ultras are for everybody, but I think that you should definitely give it a shot, or give challenging yourself a shot.
Yeah, I think I agree. It doesn't have to be ultra running. I'm now doing a little bit of more mountain biking, trying to find myself within that. I did my first 100-mile mountain bike race last year in Leadville, and it's the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the US. I was doing it on the back of running the Grand Slam of 100-mile races. So Western States, Wasatch, Leadville, and Old Dominion. And I also threw in this 100-mile bike race as well. So I was really tired from the running. I was struggling in the altitude at Leadville, and now I find myself on a bike trying to finish 100 miles. And I was ill prepared as a mountain biker, but I had the training and the ability from a running point of view to utilize that. But I also had the mindset to be able to know that even if I'm going to be right at the back, which I was, I can still get through it mentally. Mentally, there was no issues whatsoever. I just didn't have the physical capability. And I finished that mountain bike race 6th last, which is a huge, completely different way that I would finish a road running, an ultra race. To be at the back was really unique for me, but I learned so much, and I probably learned more from that race of not knowing if I was going to make each cutoff, to having to really drive and to dig deep and to push myself, and the worry of not finishing the race was there, and it was real. And when I finished, like, I was in tears of joy, and just found myself like really challenged again with a new sport and something else. And now I'm looking to ride the Trans North Georgia race, which is 350 miles, and that's on in a couple of months. And it's just taking up something different.
Is that another biking race?
Another mountain biking race. It's self-supported. You have to have your bike packing stuff with you. You can stop in shops, but you can't take support off people that you know. And there's no checkpoints, so it's going to suck for a few days, 3 or 4 days of mountain biking. As I say, I'm no mountain biker like I am as an ultra runner, and but that's kind of the challenge now that's really driving me to say, you know what, I'm finding I'm up against it, and that's really cool to do.
Wow, that's I guess that's another way to bring yourself and humble yourself a little bit, to kind of bring that humility back, even though you've gone so far in this crazy sport the other way, and then to kind of do this new sport that you're not so great at or new at, but still
Absolutely.
having that mindset and really bringing that humility that maybe you kind of didn't have before in that sport.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's really refreshing to actually to see it from a different aspect, and being at the back of the pack and just understanding, the people and the energy and the drive that they have, which is exactly the same as the people at the front. And, it's really incredible to see people of all ages and abilities finishing these races, whether it's ultra races or bike races. So, yeah. I mean, I was looking forward to doing the California Untamed this year, which is 330 miles foot race, like an ultra race,
Uh-huh.
California. And unfortunately, that was cancelled. So
Yeah.
I got this crazy idea to join this bike race instead.
Let's try something new.
Yeah.
Wow, man. Oh, that's really cool. I was going to ask you if you kind of cross train and other things like that, but it seems like you're just looking for that new challenge, and obviously that's kind of a little bit of cross training, I would say, especially mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's sort of I'm going to use this year just to take a break. And I had 2 really massive years with running, so the body probably needs a break, a bit of
Yeah.
refreshment, and then got some big challenges for next year, and come out and hopefully, you know, give it a good crack again then.
So when you when was it when you were after you got Gobi home and everything where you were like, okay, this is a crazy story, it's a cool story, and I wanna write this book?
Well, I never really thought that actually. It was only when people started contacting me from big publishing houses all around the world that they were telling me, like, "Can you tell me more about this story? What happened out there? And tell me more about yourself." And a big publishing company called HarperCollins spoke with me, and they said, "You know, we think this story is incredible. Like, we want to get you to write a book about it, and especially the journey through my own personal life to the connection with Gobi and the reasons why I do all the things that I do is more than just about running the race. And there's so many different levels and things that you can take away from the book that I think it really makes it a unique book, whether you're a runner, a dog lover, an adventurer, or just a humanitarian. There's so many wonderful aspects that you connect with. And I never, ever, ever in a million years, as a 13-year-old boy leaving home with nothing, would ever have thought that I'd have New York Times best-selling book, a book that's now in 21 languages all around the world. Is something that I say to kids is, you know, you never know where life can take you. Be kind to others, be kind to animals, and you might have a wonderful experience and journey like this as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's the way to live your life.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'd never have ever imagined that this would ever happen to me. And then one day to have Hollywood ring and say we want to make a film as well was just like fell off my chair then, you know.
Wow, that's got to be like a slap in the face to reality. Like where am I right now? Oh my goodness.
So that's pretty cool, and be great to see Gobi on the screen, and just to think, you know, how far we've both come is pretty incredible. But also to use her story and her profile to be able to help other animals in need. And you know, a lot of the time I get asked, "Oh, does Gobi still run?" But her desert days and her ultra marathon days are over. But you know, we still run for charity and make sure when we do run together that we're raising money for animals and Adopt Don't Shop. And hopefully the story of what we're sharing with Finding Gobi does help other animals as well.
Oh, perfect. That's beautiful. It really is. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, if you want to go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you on like your Instagram and or you know, Facebook or what other platforms that you have.
So everything regarding Finding Gobi is at Finding Gobi. At Finding Gobi, and I'm on Dion Leonard Ultra Runner on Facebook.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
It's been awesome chatting with you guys. I look forward to seeing how you get on at the 100 miler, and hopefully paths will cross someday at a 200 miler or something crazy out there.
I
That would
hope
be
so.
cool, yeah.
That'd be a dream come true, man. All right. You have a good day.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.